Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here. Rafe, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It takes something, does it not, for a Prime Minister to be so hapless that every time a story kind of pops up, he's incapable of stopping it from spreading. He's incapable of stopping it from reverberating. I mean, this story about, Trump complaining about electoral interference should have been killed off at birth. They should have said, look, we're not interested in interfering in the American election. This is what we think. This is what I'm going to say. Whoever wins the election, we will support them, blah-de-blah. But he's done none of that, and so the story's still on the front page. It's still the main story on the Times front page and the Telegraph front page.
Yeah, I mean, the chap's remarkably naive politically.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any political acumen, and neither do many of his advisors, apparently, it seems to be. And it just goes to show, actually, how sort of, immature they are for this role, how inexperienced they are on all of this. Because, I mean, it should have been blatantly obvious. When you're in opposition, of course you can go and do whatever you want to do. Yeah. But they knew that they were going to form the next government. It was obvious, right? Yeah. So someone should have said, actually, guys, this might pose problems for us. Right. Perhaps, for once we can actually take a back seat on it this time. Because, yeah, sure. I mean, the Tories...
Or at the very least, let's not send the three most senior people in the party to go and hobnob with the Democratic National Convention Committee.
Importantly, let's not pay for McSweeney's travel, right? So let's understand that the Labour Party actually paid for McSweeney's travel to this Democratic Convention. And, of course, what the Republicans are now saying is that there is such similarity in the messaging between the Democrats and the Labour Party that it seems to them clear that they've been in cahoots and been advising each other, which is very important. And actually a US election lawyer has also said that McSweeney and his pal, who were at the convention earlier when Kamala Harris was appointed, that they could also be considered a breach of rules because they were making political contributions in terms of their conversations as well.
And there's a very nice picture on the front page of the Daily Telegraph of John Lehal, who I've never heard of until this moment, but he's the Labour Party's chief operating officer, which sounds like a pretty big job, standing in what looks like a sort of special box-stroke-booth at the Democratic National Convention, having a glass of beer.
Well, and he tweeted that he had valuable catch-up time with top Democrat officials when he was there. Right. So I'm sure they weren't just discussing the weather when they were meeting each other. And what's very interesting is that another party, unnamed by the Telegraph, said that they also tried to do the same thing and take volunteers over, but they abandoned it because the Electoral Commission advised against it and said that they would have to, declare all their travel expenses and so forth.
Right. And what we also know is that there was a Labour Party, and again, I put this to Steve Reid yesterday. I'm not sure if we're going to have the clip ready in time for this morning, but Steve Reid was asked directly by me. He's the Minister of State for the Department of the Environment, and he said absolutely no Labour underwriting took place. There was absolutely no question about the Labour Party officially doing it. And I said, well, hang on a minute. The woman who organised it, the woman who asked for volunteers to go, was working on behalf of the Labour Party. She put up a LinkedIn post, which has now been deleted, suggesting that they would be given places to stay, all of that. And again, it's not a massive story, but the Labour Party have been so useless at putting it away that it's becoming a bigger story.
Well, and she was their sort of chief of operations. Yeah. I mean, she's got all of that experience coming into it from her position in the Labour Party, which is obviously influencing her abilities and her connections and everything else that she has. Also, some of these others who have travelled over, they weren't paid for by the Labour Party, but they were paid for by think tanks very close to the Labour Party.
And if you're staying in somebody's house, I would say that HMRC, for example, would take that to be a gift in kind of some kind, and it would be taxable, wouldn't it? A benefit.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It would have to be declared. But, of course, at the end of the day, this is all about essentially, destroying potentially the special relationship we have with somebody who was the most Anglophilic president we've ever seen, right? Man who loves England. But we know, of course, he's got a very prickly skin, and if he takes umbrage at something, well, woe betide you. And, Conservative Prime Ministers had a tough time keeping him happy and pleased. How he's going to deal with Keir Starmer after this, I don't know.
Well, that's it. And again, even if that's not the issue is that the former President of the United States of America, who may well be the next president, has actually filed a legal claim against the Labour government of this country, saying they're interfering in a US election. That in itself is a big story.
Yeah. And, of course, you have to understand, of course, Trump is playing politics, Harris is playing politics. Now, they're both, trying to do whatever they can to make those very narrow margins increase. So, of course, he's obviously making more of a meal out of this than necessarily he would have.
Of course. And let's have a look at what Kamala Harris has been saying as well, because at the end of the day, she is now trailing, it would seem, in most of the polls in the swing states. It's still very close. We should always say that. But you know, the sort of the bump that she got, shall we say, from coming in instead of Joe Biden has disappeared. But she's now seeking all sorts of very, very strange kind of corners of the American public to try and get sympathy for herself. Have a look at this.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally, one that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States.
So, first of all, she's pronouncing it Adolf Hitler, which slightly irritates me. Second of all, the idea that you actually would liken the former president of the United States of America to Adolf Hitler is ridiculous, isn't it?
This is desperate stuff. I think the Kamala campaign are panicking now because, yes, you say that there's very little between the two of them, but actually voting has already started, early voting has started, and the Republicans have never seen such strong support in the early voting from people. So actually, a lot of people now think actually all of the momentum is behind Trump, and this is his to lose now, and so you're getting these desperate tactics. Look, this comes out from General Kelly, these accusations about Hitler and so forth, but they're not new.
No.
This came a long time ago, and he actually wrote about this years ago. So why is it now suddenly coming out in the last 2 weeks? This is clearly a panicked campaign happening, but it's so disingenuous and it's so dangerous because, of course, Trump is the only candidate who's had assassination attempts from those people suffering from Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes.
If you're now going to publicly declare this man is a fascist and a danger, he's like Hitler, how many other lunatics are going to now want to take...
And this I know from a fact, because I talk to people in America who are friends of mine who are, you know, what I might regard as reasonable people, and reasonable Democrats don't like it. They're going, why are you going down this route? Why are you trying? Because all you're doing, really, is alienating ordinary sort of middle-class, middle-of-the-road voters who don't particularly like Donald Trump, but don't see him as the devil incarnate. And you're making out that he's some kind of, you know, most evil man that's ever walked the earth.
Well, and people forget, we heard all of this when he was first becoming elected, all these fears about a fascist dictator and so forth. We saw none of that when he was in office, right?
Not at all.
And so, you know, it's the boy who cried wolf, isn't it?
I mean, yesterday we had a clip from Joe Biden saying we've got to lock him up. He's dangerous, we've got to lock him up. Coming up, we're going to talk about slavery reparation demands, because apparently the Prime Minister says that he will not bow to any of these demands while he's in Samoa, speaking on his way to a 6-day Heads of Commonwealth meeting on the plane. Imagine being stuck on a plane for 28 hours with Keir Starmer. I can't think of anything worse, but we'll come back to that and the Commonwealth scenario coming up next.